Welcome to the show where we share the stories of the many who intersect with our healthcare system but are rarely heard from. My name is Kevin Poe, founder and editor of Kevin MD. Today in the show we have Michelle Owens. She is a palliative care physician and she wrote the Kevin MD article, I Do Not Want to Be Resilient. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks so much for having me.
We'll get into the article in a little bit, but first off, can you share your story and journey to where you are today?
I'd love to. So I actually started out in general surgery and then made the switch to family medicine, where I had the opportunity to find out more about hospice and palliative medicine. So I completed my family medicine residency in my hometown and then completed a fellowship in hospice and palliative medicine. I've been out in practice now for a little over 5 years and have had the opportunity to both start an inpatient, outpatient palliative care program at a small community hospital and currently work at a nonprofit hospice agency in a freestanding inpatient hospice unit where I take care of patients and their families nearing the last hours, days, and weeks of their life. And so, the work that is done in hospice and palliative medicine can be emotionally depleting and hard. And so it's really important for sustainability in this field to have good strategies to take care of myself, take care of my team, in order to be able to do this work for, maybe 20 or 30 more years at least. And so, with the pandemic, it's highlighted a lot of the things that really have helped us to care for ourselves in terms of connection, the power of human touch, being with each other, and just being able to share our stories really seemed to be taken away when COVID hit and all of a sudden PPE, social distancing, virtual formats instead of in person really took that away. And so, and looking for ways to be able to authentically connect, take care of myself, take care of my staff who I saw were really struggling. I just started to look at different things that were out there. And, I think that resiliency and self-care and well-being have been thrown around a lot during the pandemic, some for good, some for bad. And I had the opportunity with that to find a program through the American Academy of Family Physicians that was focused just on this. It was called the Leading Physician Wellbeing Scholar Program, and it was 10 months long. I just finished it earlier this year. And it was really a wonderful opportunity to get resources for how to advocate for ourselves, different tips and tricks of being able to really focus on our own self-care, and then also to connect with 100 other family docs who were feeling the same way. And I think that's been one of the biggest things, is just connecting and validating each other that we're not alone in feeling the way that we are and finding ways to make a change. And so with that, I've had the opportunity over the past 6 months to, write some blogs for my local wellness or local county medical society. Also started a Facebook group for hospice and palliative medicine, interdisciplinary team members who are interested in self-care. And amazingly, in 6 months, we have 300 members. And then also have advocated at the national level within my Academy of Hospice and Palliative Medicine to start a self-care forum with a colleague. And so just trying to find ways to advocate, get the word out, support each other. And I find that it also helps to support my own self-care.
You talk more about that in your Kevin MD article, I Do Not Want to Be Resilient. Now, you talk about the stresses specific to hospice and palliative care medicine. What are some of the specific cases that hospice physicians or palliative medicine physicians would face?
Oh, goodness, Kevin. I don't know how much time we have. So, the thing is, this work is meeting people kind of living with serious illness and navigating the last chapter of their life is really a privilege. It's an opportunity to connect with people and to ask them questions that sometimes they've never been asked before, right? What makes life worth living to you? What are you willing to go through for more time? And helping them to navigate some of the hard choices in terms of what they want their last weeks, months, years to look like. And the work that I do, oftentimes things have happened quickly. And so trying to just be present and allow the patient and their family to process what they're going through and offering support. And oftentimes just listening can be the most therapeutic thing for them and the most comforting. But with that comes having good boundaries to not take home other people's kind of heavy challenges or conditions that they're living with. I mean, in the field of hospice and palliative medicine, we're often the ones, treating symptoms that are causing suffering, but we bear witness to suffering until we can get those symptoms treated. We're often the ones having the conversations in terms of stopping aggressive treatments, taking people off of ventilators, stopping dialysis, people who are no longer eating and drinking anymore, and talking to their families about how giving them artificial nutrition is unlikely to improve their quality of life and more likely harm them. And so, with that comes a lot of responsibility. And so it's really important for us in this field to have good boundaries so that we can continue to give the empathy and the compassion for these patients and their families, but also maintain it for ourselves.
What are some of the resources available to palliative care physicians to help tackle some of these challenges?
So, I think that when I trained as a fellow, one of the biggest things we were encouraged to do is to take our PTO. The fellowship was not as rigorous as residency training, so that in and of itself was somewhat protective. But I will say that as a fellow, I remember, my work week being a lot shorter, but feeling so much more exhausted. And it took me some time to realize that exhaustion was due to just the emotional exhaustion and heaviness. And so I think that it's talked about a little bit. It's being talked about a lot more now. I think programs are seeing how important it is, especially, this has kind of been the silver lining of the pandemic, that people have seen, oh, we need to talk about this. And we really need to talk about this, not only at a fellow level, a resident level, a medical student level, right? We need to normalize it, destigmatize it. And so, I think we're so ingrained in medicine that if you're not going, right, you're not the good doctor. You're not the person who's, the team player, and we really have to support each other. One of the things that I think has been going on for a while that helps with wellness, and even as a resident, we had the opportunity to participate in it, is Balint groups. And so, Balint groups are generally, groups that meet with 8 to 12 physicians that focus on kind of the relationship between the physician and the patient, geared more to talking about those patients that you see on your schedule, that you get a visceral reaction, that you're not excited to see them, and trying to work through that and hear other perspectives as to what might the patient be going through, what might the physician be experiencing. And, as a family medicine resident, we had that as part of our training over the course of the 3 years. And that was really helpful. And that was also something that this Leading Physician Wellbeing program partnered with the American Balint Society, to where we had a longitudinal experience with Balint groups as well. And that's been something that has been used at a few fellowship programs for hospice and palliative fellows. And I think is something that could be more beneficial kind of over the long term, even out in training, because of the difficulty of the cases that we do and how heavy it is. And so again, I think, seeing how much passion and support there's been out there just in the Facebook group, and our National Academy supporting us and starting a forum, I don't think we've done enough, but people are open to trying to figure out what that looks like and how we can incorporate it better to support each other and ourselves.
Your Kevin MD article is titled, "I Do Not Want to Be Resilient." Can you talk more about your article?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, interestingly, resilient has been thrown out a lot, for good or for bad. And for me, it hits me in a way that I have quite a bit of disdain for the word. I feel like a lot of times it's used, it's the word that follows it is training. So more resilience training, which, for us in training is usually never something that improves your well-being per se. It just seems like something that kind of gaslights you on top of all of the other things you have to do. And so, the article came about really that, I'm in Texas. The summers here are pretty brutal, and had some hanging plants that I had not been tending to that died. And so I thought, well, instead of looking at dead plants, I'll go and replace them. And my husband's a physician. And so I think as our loving partners do, they know how to press our buttons. And so as I told him, oh, I'm replacing these hanging plants today, he said, oh, those plants weren't resilient. And I was just like, oh. And I said, no, I don't want to be resilient though. I said, I want to be hardy. I want to have, good strategies and support so that I don't have to get to the point of being resilient, right? I mean, if you look up the definition of resilient and even the images that come along with it, it's not something that makes you feel good, right? I mean, you've basically made it through severe trauma, white knuckling it to the end of almost death, but then coming out on the end, surviving, right? And I don't want to just survive. I want to thrive, right? I want to have that support from my peers, have the support from my organization, to where I don't have to be resilient, right? To where I already have the things in place to where I can be sustainable in the work that I do. I can have the meaning and I can have those boundaries to continue to do the things that serve me and serve my patients. And so that's really kind of how the idea for the article came up, and then just kind of talking about these things, because I think that a lot of us feel this way, and that's been evident in just the amount of feedback I've received from the article and talking to a lot of my friends who are also physicians, that we feel this way, but oftentimes we feel alone.
Mm.
And I think there's some concern that if we voice this, that we look weak. You know, in medicine, we struggle so much with wanting to be perfect. And if we can't do it all and we can't have it all, then we're not perfect and we're struggling and we feel so alone in that. And I think that that feeds even into, you know, the increased physician suicide rate and all of the increased burnout, right? Is that I think we just need to normalize it and speak our truths so that we can validate each other and connect and make a difference, right? We've got to do something different in order to maintain our workforce and to be happy in this field and to be happy in medicine.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you in that resilience almost places the blame of burnout on the clinicians themselves rather than the system that may be leading to some of the symptoms of stress and burnout. So what's the path forward if you are running a hospital or academic medical system and you're seeing an increasing rate of clinician burnout and stress? What would you suggest to be the path forward to help address this?
Great question. So, you know, I think one of the biggest things is starting the conversation, right? Opening the dialogue, asking people what they need, asking them what things are going well for them, and then what things are not going well, right? You know, in your day, what things are serving you and helping to fill your cup, and what things are always depleting it. And I think, you know, we know from studies and from people talking about this, right? The electronic medical record is oftentimes, you know, doesn't help us but hurts us. So finding ways to help that to be more successful. You know, I think the institutions and the places that are able to institute scribes or ways to kind of decrease that administrative burden and the documentation burden are really impactful. You know, and I think it's important too that if you ask people what's going well and what's not going well, that you commit to acting on that, right? I think one of the worst things you can do is survey people or start the conversation, but then not have any type of follow through or not have any changes. And so I think it's really having that authentic conversation, getting the buy-in of, you know, the other C-suite administrators about how important it is for us to really have physician well-being and healthcare worker well-being at the forefront. Because if we continue to lose people, right, you know, the great resignation is upon us, I feel like, in healthcare. And if we don't do something to stop that, we're going to be in a really bad place, right? You know, the silver tsunami is coming, the baby boomers are aging, and especially in hospice and palliative medicine, right? I mean, those are the patients we oftentimes take care of. But I think, you know, in hospitals, you know, I see a lot of conversations about, you know, how chief wellness officers are not very well respected. And I think a lot of physicians find that wellness these days have been free pizzas and thank yous and a pat on the back, or maybe like, here's an extra PTO day. But if you call out sick because your child is sick, then we're going to hold that against you. So I think it's, again, really getting down deep and having it be a foundation of the organization that it's truly supported, right? That, you know, we change some PTO days to be specifically for wellness days and that they're mandated that you use them, right? Like once a quarter, you take at least one wellness day. And that's not something that you are looked at as not being a team player. That's looked at as you're modeling well how to take care of yourself, for your staff, for your patients, right? So I think it's just reframing that narrative, having the conversation, and then making changes that are going to be sustainable and impactful.
We're talking to Michelle Owens. She's a palliative care physician and she wrote the Kevin MD article, I Do Not Want to Be Resilient. Michelle, what are some of your take-home messages that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience?
You know, I think importantly is just to know that you're not alone, right? I think we're all feeling this in some way. And so to know that these feelings are valid, I would actually be more concerned if you're not feeling this way, right? I mean, the pandemic has highlighted a lot of the things that are broken in our system. And so, you know, number one, knowing you're not alone. Number two, advocating for yourself and advocating within your organization for well-being, finding out what resources you have, finding out what the buy-in is for it, and trying to champion it or find someone else who's willing to do that and advocate as well. And if the organization's not going to support you, you don't have to stay, right? Life is too short. That is one of the things that I see day to day in my work, is that we are not promised tomorrow. And so we can't think, well, in 5 years, I'll do something different. In 10 years, I'll do something different. We have to make change now, because if we don't advocate for ourselves and do what's best for us, there's no way we can sustain and continue to do the good work that we do for our patients, for their families, and also for our families, right? If we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of them. So, be kind to yourself and do the things that fill your cup. Say no to the things that deplete it. And just know again that we're in this together and we can change the narrative together.
Michelle, thank you so much for sharing your time and insight. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Kevin.